good content today with our guest. For those of you guys who don't know me, I am Deanna Haas, the SVP of Growth for Sold.com. Many of you guys saw me on board to join our network. One of the really great benefits of being in our network is we talk to amazing people like Emily Terrell. And so I'm excited to have her here to help build up Emily a little bit more. Not that like you're Emily, my goal is to have you walk away with like the biggest ego ever after this. She is a coach for Tom Ferry, but she is also a realtor. And so I think what's great about talking to people who are helping you guys evolve and think outside the box and give you ideas is she's been in your shoes. She is in your shoes. She operates a team in San Antonio. And so it's not her just coming from an outside perspective. These are things that she has implemented with herself and her team to help her be successful and get to where she is today. And so what I love about what Emily is going to talk about is efficiencies and also just looking at not treating everybody the same, figuring out how you can communicate with the consumer that you're talking to and figure out what triggers and things are going to help that person get you to the finish line. And I think there's a lot of subtle ways to get to your goals without having to be so direct in your close. But also, again, customizing that based off the audience you're talking to. So Emily, without further ado, I hand the microphone over to you.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Deanna, and Sold.com, and just everybody that's here today. I am beyond ecstatic to be able to present to you guys and just be able to share all of this content. It's one of the things I absolutely love about coaching and presenting is being able to share my experiences and my knowledge with everybody here. So while we're doing this, mainly because I love people to participate, why don't put in the chat where you're from? Because I love to see this and I love to see where everybody's from. So we'll check it out while you're here. Now, while that's happening, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Coach Emily Terrell. And if we're not already following each other on socials, let's do that. And one reason that I absolutely love to do this is because I'm there for questions, right? I'm there to answer any questions that you have. And if there's something that I talk about today that you really just want to get some information on, go ahead and just send me a message on Instagram. And I'll be absolutely more than happy to reach out to you. Plus, if you're going to do any tagging for today, be sure to tag me and I'll definitely get you a follow back and we'll make sure we share stories and just trade information. So I love this. We have people from all over the place, Orange County, Vegas, Maryland. It's so awesome. So without saying that, let's take a look at what we're going to be talking today. Now, we are going to talk about communication styles, but a lot of times people are really confused as to what that actually means. So let's take a look, right? So in talking about communication styles, one of the big things that I like to compare it to is kind of like, it's love languages, right? I'm sure you guys have heard of love languages before. Well, if you think about it, love languages are things like, words of affirmation and physical touch and gift giving and all of the different ways that we're actually going to, communicate and connect with someone when it comes to love. Now, don't worry, this is not what I'm actually going to talk about today, but I wanted to just give you guys a frame of reference. Have an idea of the type of content that we are going to be talking about today. And don't worry, we are going to end with some very specific examples. There are going to be points in which I recommend that you take a screenshot with your phone, or you actually go ahead and take a picture of your computer while we're going through this, because I'm going to give you some really specific examples, but I'll let you know when that does happen so you know what I'm talking about and you're prepared. So outside of love languages, let's look at what we're actually going to be looking at today and the different styles of communication. Now, why is communication so important? Because when we're going through this, we want to actually make sure that we're communicating in the right way. Because similar to like learning styles, not everybody communicates in the same way, and not everybody retains the information that you're wanting to give in the exact same way. So I do have to ask you guys a question, and let's just see if you guys are aware of it. But do you know how, is your communication style costing you money? And have you ever thought about that, right? Like how you communicate, how it may be different than maybe, let's say, a seller. Because remember, Sold.com, what you're trying to do is get seller leads, right? That's our entire point of having a program like Sold.com, is to get those seller leads. And maybe is the way that you're communicating actually being detrimental to your business? Are you losing leads? Are you missing out on appointments because you didn't select the correct method of communication? And part of that battle is identifying how you communicate as well as identifying how the person that you're talking to communicates. Now, we are going to go through this, and I'm going to give you kind of an in-depth look of the different styles of communication, but then I'm also going to go through and give you examples of some of the best ways you can communicate long-term with your clients. Now, in looking at that, there are really three main types of communication. There's three main ways, right? There's visual, so it's seeing. There's kinesthetic, which is touch. And then there's auditory. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have thought about it, but have you thought about maybe what you are? Have you thought about maybe the style of communication that you are most attracted to? Now, I know for me, I'm actually auditory. And it's the reason I'm auditory, and the reason I can tell I'm auditory, and it's just an example, is if I'm listening to something on Netflix, I'll actually watch something on Netflix by turning on the show. I'll set my phone off, especially if it's something I've watched before. I'll set my phone off to the side, and I can actually imagine what's going on in the scene just by listening to the people talk and listening to the noises of the show. I don't necessarily have to actually see it to really understand it. So in saying that, right, setting up that idea of understanding how I communicate is really helpful for me. The other thing that I do as an auditory communicator is I'll actually set myself up and I'll go and talk to people on the phone when I'm driving. When I'm bored, the first thing that I'm going to do is talk to people instead of texting or instead of video messaging them. Now, I do think it is funny because I'm here doing a video presentation for you guys. But in addition to that, I work on Zoom calls all day. But setting up that auditory communication for me is most important. Now, that addresses how I communicate, but let's look at how other people communicate and how you can identify it and how you can come to the same conclusions that I did about myself. So let's take a look at this, right? Let's look at the different styles of communication, actually get into the details and the nitty-gritty of them. Okay, so visual communication, right? It's the first one I mentioned. So visual communication is the transmission of information and ideas using symbols and imagery. For example, the slides I'm providing to you today. Now, what's crazy about visual communications, and the reason that I always use slides when I'm doing a presentation, is because 65% of people actually communicate this way. It is the most common style of communication. It's why oftentimes in college, when there's just lectures, most people cannot follow it as well as a presentation that has slides. Because it is the most common form of communication. Most of the time people need to see it. Now, people are going to rely heavily on images, charts, visual aids, understanding concepts. And they're also going to be very detail-oriented when it comes to visual representation of information. What does that mean? And this is an important thing. It means that they're going to find mistakes in your presentation. Now, the problem is 65% of people communicate visually. So 65% of people are finding mistakes in your presentation. So we need to make sure that if we are communicating this way and we're communicating with the masses, we actually go through our presentation and make sure that it's accurate. Now, same thing with having digital information. And a great example of this and a way to communicate with sellers is to make sure that we're coming up with really great content and we're being aware of our visual communications. And I want to show you an example, right? So one example I'm going to show you is the very first listing presentation that I was given. And this is when I started, for actually my real estate career about 10 years ago. I attended a listing workshop where I learned to become a better listing agent. And part of paying the $50 was that I got a listing presentation. So I'm going to show you the listing presentation that I was given. Now, I'm going to warn you, I've never actually used this, but this is my presentation. It came with really nice visual pieces of communication, right? Somebody made this for me back in the day. Again, I didn't use it. This is probably one of my favorite images, was the crystal ball with the CMA in it. Right now, while that will appeal to someone with a visual communication, because it is such an important part, I decided to change it up, right? So now I use something that's a little bit better. It's more visually appealing, and it's got information, and it's set in a visual manner so that people are seeing it. They're seeing not just the list of homes I sold at this time when I made this, but also the visual representation of it. Because this is going to be more effective than just telling people the information. So somebody that relies highly on visual representation, that's going to be more important, right? Is having that visual representation. So we want to make sure that once we identify someone as a visual communicator, we're making sure that we are providing them with the right content. Now, what are some of the ways that people who are visual communicators identify themselves? They're going to say things like, I see what you mean, and that looks good, right? Even the words and the phrases that they say represent sight. So now what's important about, let's say you're going to a listing presentation with somebody that's a visual communicator. Not only are we going to make sure that the materials we bring, we're also going to make sure that we have very specific data points that are represented in graphs. So in other words, just showing up and saying, hey, did you know that the average days on market is 69 days? Will not be as effective as actually bringing information for them to see in a graphic manner, right? And when we're printing it, we're making sure it's in color instead of just being in black and white, right? We're making sure that that visual representation is there. So after we go through visual, right? So we've identified what makes up visual. We understand that they are highly focused on seeing, and we understand that majority of people, 65% of them, do represent visual communicators. Now let's look at what makes up an auditory communicator. All right, so auditory is different. Remember, I mentioned that I'm an auditory communicator primarily. So when I'm an auditory communicator primarily, it's going to make up only about 20 to 30% of people. Only 20 to 30% actually communicate in this manner. In addition to that, they prefer hearing information, and they may grasp concepts better when they're explained verbally. In addition to that, they're going to focus on things like podcasts, verbal explanations, and tone variations in speech are more engaging for them. So what does that mean? That means that when you show up to your listing appointment, when you show up to provide a market analysis, it's going to be better to meet them in person, right? So through Sold.com, you're going to get that request for more information. You're going to receive that request for, the CMA, the market analysis. So in somebody that's an auditory communicator, it's going to be more important for them to either get on the phone with them to explain it, or to actually go in person and actually show them the information, but explain it to them. Walk them through why you chose these specific comps over these. Walk them through what's for sale in their market and just explain to them in more detail than what you have written out. And that's the most important for them, because they need to actually hear you explain it more than they need to see the graphs. Same thing with me. I'd rather have a conversation with you than text you. So follow-up for them is going to be more auditory, which guess what? Means phone calls, right? They're going to be more drawn to a phone call than they are going to be drawn to a text or a video message. So our third and final type of communication is going to be kinesthetic. Oh, wait, actually, let me tell you real quick. They're going to say things like, that sounds good and I hear you, right? That sounds good and I hear you are going to be the trademarks of what makes up somebody that has an auditory communication. Okay? So now let's go over to people who are looking at kinesthetic communication, right? Now, kinesthetic is different, right? You see from the picture, it's touch, right? So remember I showed you this example of this booklet? This booklet's really important. When I go to a listing presentation, I'm going to make sure that I actually physically bring this book. I'm going to make sure that I give them the ability to leave this book. And then also an important factor of it is the very last page of this booklet is going to have a section for notes, right? Because a kinesthetic communicator is going to be attracted to being able to take notes. So I'm going to make sure that I actually give them that opportunity. Now, here's the scenario of it and why I do provide this notes and this looks visually appealing. It's not as many people that are kinesthetic communicators as you would think, right? It only makes up about 5 to 15% of people that communicate this way. It's not a very large group, not a large group that actually needs that kinesthetic and that touch in order to retain the information. They do prefer hearing the information, but they're going to grasp the concept better if you, sorry, that's actually the wrong information there. But they're going to actually, if they're able to communicate with you and talk to you and actually be able to feel the information, such as leaving a booklet, that's going to be the thing that actually grasps them the most. And again, like I said, taking notes and actually being able to retain what you're doing. And I'm sure that many of you, some of you possibly are taking notes right now. And that's going to be some of your kinesthetic communication. Now, they are going to say things such as, I feel that. And that doesn't sit right with me, right? Things that actually demonstrate the feeling and the types of communication, right? That's going to be the verbal phrases in which they use that can demonstrate how they are kinesthetic communicators with you. So in saying that, would you guys also believe that not everybody is one thing? Right? Most people are actually a combination of more than one. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, you know, I take notes, but I also really need to hear it, maybe you're a combination of kinesthetic and auditory. Or I need to see it, but the act of taking the notes and then rewriting them makes me remember exactly what the notes were. And just as an example for me, I'm an auditory communicator, which means that I hear, when I was in college, I would listen to the lectures, but I'd also take notes at the same time. And then what I would do is when I got home, I would rewrite the notes. And once I rewrote those notes, I was able to retain the information. And I never needed to go back in and read the notes again because I had replayed them in my mind, the sound of the professor. As I was writing them, I could hear him explaining, or she, whoever the professor was, I could hear them explaining the information to me in both manners. So for me, having that combination of both, and for most people, they have that combination of both. Now, what does that mean for you when you're preparing information to take to your appointments, right? What does that mean? That means that we need to have a combination, right? For example, and I know I bring this up, but it's also my favorite example because I really like the way somebody designed this for me, right? I'm going to have visual communication. I'm going to have pretty pictures. It's also going to be kinesthetic because I'm going to be able to leave it with them. And then it's also going to be verbal because I'm not going to necessarily read every single thing that's here, but I'm going to explain it to them. I'm going to explain to them how we are a team and how our team, you know, we're a 5-person team, what each person's role is, and how you can reach out and communicate with any member of that team, right? The 10 steps for selling your home. I'm going to go ahead and go over that with them. And if they're visual, it's going to be great because they can see it. And if they're kinesthetic, they can actually, you'll probably actually see them touching it as you go through it so they can know, okay, hey, you know what's a listing agreement? Okay, great. You know, and then we're going to, you know, accept and sign the final offer and so on and so forth, right? They're actually going to go through and touch it while they are communicating. So that does prepare for, you know, when you go to these appointments, what do we think we need to have? And if you guys have ideas of what you think you're going to change in your listing presentations or change when you go through to do a CMA, feel free to put it in the chat, right? Feel free to tell me what you think you should do based on some of these communication styles. You know, so for example, and I'll give some examples why you guys are doing this because there is a smidge of a delay, right? But some of the examples that you could do is actually taking the physical paperwork with you as well as having it visually on your computer. So one of the ways that I prep for a listing presentation is I'll go through, because even though it may be just me dropping off a CMA, I still treat it like a listing presentation, right? I'll go through and I print off the comps so that I have them physically for the client to be able to touch and to walk away with. But then I also at the same exact time will make sure that I have it's pulled up on my computer so that I can go through every single one of the pictures so that I can show them exactly where I've got the comps, show them on a map, and we can interact with the screen at the exact same time. And this allows me to explain it, to make it interactive so they can grab the papers, they can touch it, and then to bring visuals to make sure that they fully understand the information that's being provided to them. So in saying that, let's look at some ways that we can actually communicate with the people that we're talking to and determine how we figure out what type of communication they are, right? So there's two ways, right? There's what they say to us and what we say to them. when we're determining their communication styles. So the first thing is going to be what they say to us, right? So are they asking for detailed data or reports? Are they asking for that information? And are they asking it to be detailed? That's important. Or they just said, hey, you know what, just call me. Just give me a call. Like, can you just call me and tell me? Right? Have you ever had somebody do that where they're just like, oh, yeah, like I'm interested, but could you just tell me over the phone? Right? That's going to be someone that's auditory. And then if they want to meet with you in person, or they're really just wanting to check out properties, or they come into your open house to meet with you, those are going to be people that are kinesthetic, right? Where they actually want to see it, they want to feel it, they want to grab the paperwork. Okay? So that's how the way they ask, the way they request, and the way they communicate back to you and how they want to meet with you demonstrates the type of communicator they are. Now, if they just say, oh, hey, I want a CMA, if that's the only communication, or it's just yes or no, obviously those don't give us clues, right? So we also need to look at the communication style and what we can ask them to help determine that. So we can do prompts, right? Would you prefer I go over the report in detail on a call? Or can I send you a brief overview with some charts, right? Some of that stuff is going to help us, because if they say, you know, if they say, oh yes, I prefer that you come by, what do we think they are, right? They're kinesthetic. If we go through, and we do, you know, if we go through and we say, hey, let's go over this in detail, and let's make sure that, you know, you bring comps and you bring information, of course, that's kinesthetic. If they would prefer just to do a Zoom call with you, where you showcase to them the information, that's going to be someone that's visual. And if they just say, hey, you know what, like, can you just call me? That's fine. Like, hey, yeah, you know what, just call me. That's going to be someone that's auditory. So we need to adjust our communication style in order to meet their needs, right? Now, in all of this, I've given you a ton of ideas that go through and talk about like when you first get that lead, right? But what's also super important, it's long-term follow-up, right? Because what's one of the ways that people miss? It's long-term follow-up. Did you guys know that the average lead time is going to be 18 to 36 months? 18 to 36 months. That means that the person that reaches out to you, or the lead that you get today, most likely is not ready to sell till like next year. I mean, what, it's 2020, you may not sell them for till 2027, right? So what we need to do is work on some long-term follow-up, right? We need to actually look at how do we communicate with them long-term, and how do we adjust how we're communicating with them. So would you guys like some ideas? And I'm sure everybody's going to say yes, but would you guys like some very specific ideas of what to do? So this is the part where I'm going to give you guys some examples of exactly things to say, so that we can make sure that we're actually communicating with people long-term. And we're going to do different types of communication and different types of ways that we can actually reach out to them. So when it, what is a good amount of times to reach out? Jose, I'll go ahead and answer that right now. Depends on how long. So the first way that I like to do is whenever somebody reaches out to me, I give them what I like to call the 10 days of pain, right? And some of these examples that I'm going to send you can absolutely be used within that 10 days of pain. So which means that usually for the first 10 days, I'll reach out to them about 9 times. And the goal is you're trying to communicate with them in order to have that daily communication until we set an appointment. After that, you're going to start to taper off. But the ideal goal is to get once a month for the next 2 to 3 years. And I know 2 to 3 years seems like a really long time, but in reality, did you know that I think it's something like 65% of transactions are done by someone else because the agent just simply didn't follow up, right? Or they didn't follow up long enough. And I think like 65% of transactions are even done after 12 months. So keep in mind, as you're getting these leads, here, all of these sold.com leads, these are people that at one point said, hey, I'm kind of interested. Hey, I want some information. But they weren't ready. And that's okay not to be ready, right? Because at the end of the day, your goal as a real estate agent, your goal is not to talk them in or out of selling. Your goal is to be in front of them when they do sell. Because think about it this way. Oh, I know this. How many of you guys have, well, let's say I drive a Volkswagen Atlas, right? And when I drive this Volkswagen, I'll tell you guys why this is important. When I got my Volkswagen Atlas, I was so excited about it. And then did you start noticing on the road whenever you bought your car that everybody drives one, right? And I know a Volkswagen Atlas is like the millennial mom car, but everybody has one and you see it everywhere, right? Same thing happens in real estate, right? It's called the frequency illusion, where when you see somebody one time, you think they are two times. So sorry, when you see them at least two times, you think they've seen them everywhere. And the frequency illusion helps us actually get sellers to want to use us. And the reason we want them, obviously we want them to use this, but the reason we like to use that frequency illusion is so that whenever they do decide, when they're like, hey, I'm ready to sell, you're in front of them. You happen to be the person that's there in front of them at the time they're ready to buy or sell. Because they're not going to just magically sell because you want them to sell. They're going to sell because they're ready to sell. So we need to make sure we're in front of them. And so we'll go, we'll go and look at some examples of what's going on. And Gilbert made a comment. He says, hey, we need business to surf and keep paying for the long-term prospects. Yeah, I mean, everybody needs business now. So you're going to follow up with the leads that come in now, but you're also going to keep them going long-term, because the long-term is what's going to keep you from that roller coaster of transactions, right? It's going to help keep you for long-term growth within your business. So let's look at some examples, right? Let's look at some transactions or some different lead generation sources that we can actually do. Okay, so we've got long-term follow-up, right? So let's look at this. All right, so in long-term follow-up, the first thing that I really recommend looking at is some ZMA text messages. Now, how many of you guys are familiar with Zillow? I'm sure everybody is, right? Have you ever thought about using Zillow as a way to lead generate? And the reason I really recommend using Zillow is because everybody knows Zillow, right? Every buyer and seller out there, they know Zillow. So whether you love or hate Zillow, it doesn't matter. Use Zillow to your advantage, right? It's something that as a buyer or seller, they have easy and instant access to. So let's actually use it, right? It's something that they can relate to. It's something that every buyer and seller can relate to. So let's look at what I'm talking about when I say a ZMA text message, right? So a ZMA text message is going to look like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the person's address, which you do have because it got sent to you when they requested their CMA, right? When they requested more information. Now keep in mind, this is long-term follow-up. This is not a text I would send right when they come in. This would be long-term follow-up, 3, 6, 9. You can send this multiple times because their value will change. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Zillow and you're going to look up their home valuation. Then you're going to take a screenshot of it. Once you take the screenshot of it, you're going to send this text. And the text says something like this. Hi, Stephen. I was on Zillow earlier today looking for a few properties in your neighborhood. And I thought I'd check out your home's estimate. They estimate that your home's value is $1.84 million. And then you send that screenshot. I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Now, going back to communication, right? What do we think this type of text message does, right? It kind of appeals to a couple different people, right? It's kinesthetic because they get to actually respond, right? People get to actually text out a response to you. It's visual because they are seeing that home valuation, right? They're seeing it on Zillow. And then it's also auditory because you're saying things like, I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? You're asking for them to communicate with you. And the good news is that they are auditory. They're probably going to call you. They may text you back, right? But you're appealing to all three types of communication with a message like this. Now, one big thing and one complaint that I hear when people, they look at this message is they're really hesitant on sending it out. And there's a word that people like to use when they give their reason why. When people give their excuse, when agents specifically say, I'm not going to send this message out. And it's the word salesy, right? But I would disagree. And I'm going to give you two examples, and you guys can tell me which one you think is salesy or not. Example A, and it goes like this. You send out a message and it says, hey, Stephen, happy holiday. The best gift that you can give me is the gift of a referral. Please let me know if you happen to know anybody that's looking to buy or sell in real estate, right? That's salesy, right? But you've got this message, and absolutely, Roger, I'll go over the message again and I'll put the screen back up so you guys can take a picture. Or if you're auditory, you can listen to it again. But this message is a little different. And if you're having trouble with going through and showcasing, like and using this message, adjust it in your mind, right? Because remember, I'm an auditory communicator. So for me, what I do is when I'm going to text this message out, I always amend in my head and I say something like this. Hey, Stephen, dude, listen to this. I don't actually type that out. I just say, dude, listen to this in my mind. I was being nosy on Zillow earlier today, looking over a few properties in your neighborhood, and I thought I'd check out your home's estimate. Dude, they said it was worth $1.84 million. I totally got my thoughts. What do you think? And then I put like an explosion emoji, right? Do you notice how changing the way you think about it, and even just some of the words you use, make it seem like you're not being quite as salesy, right? So if you have to, do that trick. Change the words a little bit in your mind so that you're comfortable with it, right? And if you have to change a few of the text, that's fine too, right? Just change it up to where you're comfortable with it. So let's look at that screen again. So does anybody that is actually a visual communicator can take a look at it and have a really great example, and feel free to screenshot it if you'd like. And don't worry, all the slides are going out. Deanna just put in the chat that she is going to do examples of these for everybody. So you'll have that directly if you aren't in a spot where you can. So in keeping with that, right? Like if you're not comfortable with the exact way that it's sent out, that's okay. Just change it a little bit. The most important thing is that you're getting in front of these potential sellers. And guess what? In this script, you're not saying, oh my gosh, are you ready to buy or sell? You're not saying, I'm just checking in. What you're saying is, hey, I'm just giving you some information. Hey, I'm just starting a conversation. And then it's up to the seller to make a choice to respond back to you. And if they don't respond back to you, that's okay, right? But it gives them the opportunity. And what else is it doing, right? It's showing that you're paying attention to their house, that you remember them. You remember getting their first piece of communication. You remember connecting with them. And Mark said it perfectly. You're telling them that you're working. And that is one of the most important pieces, right? Showing people that you're out there doing the work. And this is a great example of it. Now, one follow-up question, I do get this quite a bit, is what happens if you sent it the one time, and then the next time you go to text them, this is the text you send again? That's okay, just modify it a little bit. Steven, dude, I sent you your Zillow. I looked at your Zillow estimate like 3 months ago. Look how much it's changed. And here's 1.92 million, something like that. Which, just FYI, I'm in San Antonio. That is not an example in San Antonio. Ours would be like, look, it was 400,000, now it's 410,000. But that's okay, right? You're actually just showing them that you're like going through and you're working and you're still paying attention to them. And even if they never respond, that doesn't mean they're not paying attention. I followed up with someone for 5 years who eventually listed with me. For, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 of those years, they never ever responded. And then just one day they were like, oh, hey, thanks, Emily, for the information. Come by tomorrow at 2. Because they were still working. Not everybody responds. I'm the worst person in the world. I respond in my head constantly. And then I forget to tell people, right? All the time I apologize for, I'm so sorry, I responded in my head. Because again, remember, auditory communicator. So I hear myself saying it, but I don't necessarily respond. People are going to be the same way. They're going to be auditory communicators. They're going to not necessarily respond, but they are watching. So in addition to this one, let's look at another example of what we can do to do that. So we can also do, and this one I actually really love, is going to be the Zillow sticky letters. All right. What's important about the Zillow sticky letters is going to appeal to visual communicators as well as kinesthetic communicators, because it's something physical you're going to mail them, as well as something that they can see. Now, remember, the good part about this is that like 65% of people are visual, so it's really great that you're mailing it to them. And then the kinesthetic communicators, it does make up a smaller part of it. And then you are doing a call to action to have them reach back out to you. So hopefully, if they are auditory communicators, they will reach out to you in that. But let me show you an example for this. And I'll have you guys think about it. I'm going to show you two examples, and I'm going to give you the positives and negatives of both so that you can decide what you're wanting to do, right? So the positives and negatives of both of these. Now, this first one is designed for people that maybe have a little bit more time, money, and not necessarily as much time. Because these are going to be a little bit more mass produced, and you can actually get them printed, stuffed, mailed by someone else. And it's going to be something like this, right? It's going to be this sticky note. It's going to actually be a letter, and it's going to be completely printed. So you're not having to physically print them. You're not having to stuff them in the mail. You're actually just being able to mail them out, right? And you can usually use a mail service, a printing and mailing service, and they can do things like change some of these from like the 749, 300. If you give them a spreadsheet, they can actually adjust just this information individually, right? Same thing with pictures. You can actually have them go and adjust it by themselves without you having to create each one. Now, what's the negative of something like this, right? The negative of something like this is it looks mass produced, right? It doesn't look like you took the time to mail this to them individually, which again, positives and negatives, right? So we want to make sure that as we're going through all of this information, we've got, we're communicating with people in a way that actually makes them look like we're doing the work. So the second thing that you can do is a little bit more, I would consider lowbrow, because you'll understand here in a second, but it is a great representation. So this is the other option. And this is the Zillow sticky note. Yes, we're using Zillow again. Hey, and guess what? If you really, really hate Zillow, grab Realtor.com. Same concept. I'm just using Zillow because it's there and most people know it, but Realtor.com really has some great options too. Right? So this is the Zillow sticky note. Now, when you're looking at it, what you're going to do is you're just going to screenshot somebody's Zillow estimate, just like this, right? You're going to actually print it out. And then you're going to put this sticky note on there. Now, the ideal scenario is that it's handwritten and it's hand drawn with a circle, and you handwrite the address. So it looks like you actually stopped and took the time to write it out. And Mark mentioned earlier, it shows people that you're working. It shows people that you looked up their specific address and reached out to them. Now, I do want to go over some positives and negatives of this one, and actually both of them, is this note right here. So this note says, would you consider selling for 10% more than this? If so, text me and put your number. Okay. My pro tip, right? My pro tip is not to just use the blanket statement of 10% more. And I'll answer that question just in a moment, but I wouldn't just use it as 10% more. I would really recommend changing the narrative to fit what's actually happening. For example, so I live in San Antonio. I actually live in the San Antonio area, right? I live in the outskirts of San Antonio, which means that I see and sell a lot of properties that are on land, right? 5, 10, 15, 12 acres, somewhere in there. So I looked up property the other day that Zillow said was worth $407,000. The problem is Zillow doesn't understand land and how 12 acres affects the property. So I did a very, very fast, very simple CMA. Really just what it meant is I looked and I was like, oh, these two comps are kind of close, perfect. And I got a rough idea of what it would sell for is $650,000. So this note, I would change it from, would you consider selling for 10% more? To, would you consider selling for $250,000 more than this? If so, text me. And why is that important? Because if I sent out a blanket one that just said 10% more, what's going to happen? They're good. That person, and I'm not using exact math, but they would have said, no, I'm not selling my house for $440,000. But if I did $250,000, they'd be like, yeah, I'd sell for $657,000, right? You notice that difference. Now, Sylvia asked, how can you tell people that you can sell their home for 10% more when the market can't support it? So first things first, there are still a lot of markets in which can support it. And if it's not 10%, then figure out what that number is and adjust the marketing. right? And sometimes putting a percentage works better. Sometimes putting an actual amount works better. If it's 7%, that's fine. Go ahead and put 7% or put the number, right? Whichever one looks better on the sticky note. So don't blanket that number of 10%, especially if it's not true. Because the worst thing that could happen to you is you show up and they're like, oh, cool, I'll sell for 10% more. And then you realize you can only sell for like 3% more, right? That would not be great. However, even saying like $20,000 more, it still looks better, right? It still looks good. So make sure that we're taking just a smidge amount of time. Now, the question is how often, where do you purchase the Zillow sticky notes? That's just a Post-it note. So just a Post-it note. We all know where Post-it notes you get at Walmart, you get it on Amazon, but that's literally just a Post-it note. It's printed from the computer, and then it's just written on a Post-it note, circled with pen, right? The great news is if you have an assistant, you can definitely do it. Can you say sell it for more? Absolutely, right? So you can definitely put no number in there. And if the number is exactly the same, you could be like, hey, would you consider selling your house for this? Just for this with the arrow, right? Or you could put more than this. Now, the more accurate you are, the better the outcome is going to be. But the great news is sending this, especially with also texting and doing a combination of these over and over again, is extremely helpful. Now, I've actually talked about two different types of communication, right? One of them is going to be kinesthetic and the other one's going to be visual, right? But what do you do for auditory communicators? Well, of course, we're going to do phone calls, right? You're going to reach out to them. And do you think that we can take the messages that we're put in these text messages and call them with them? Absolutely, right? Do we also think we could call them and tell them about other properties they're selling in their neighborhood? Absolutely, we can, right? We're going to actually just make sure that we are calling them. Now, the good news is most people are a combination of communications, meaning adding those phone calls in as well as things like sticky note text messages, as well as things, or the text messages or the sticky note letters is going to help. Now, the last technique that I'm going to show you, and this is really important, and I know everybody talks about it, but of course is going to be social, right? What's important about social media? It hits all three types of communication, right? It's going to hit your auditory, because if you're doing a video where they can hear you, it's going to hit your visual because it's going to see you. It's going to see B-roll. It's going to see numbers you put up. And then third, it's going to be kinesthetic because people actually interact with their social content in order to get to yours. So let me show you some examples of some social posts that you can do. So here are two examples. Now, of course, keep in mind, when I'm telling you social, right, when I'm telling you social content, the reason I like to have people do it is because social media, in my opinion, is the new resume. Right? It's the place people go to instead of your website. Now, websites are important. I'm not saying not have one, but it's where people go first, right? And when I say social post, yes, you can do personal posts like, oh my gosh, saw this great webinar today, right? Of course you can do that, but I'm talking about the working post, right? Showing people that you're knowledgeable about their market. So let's go back to those examples. 100% take pictures of this, or you'll get a lot of information. Deanna's going to send it out later at the end of this once we go through it. So what you're going to do is you're going to do posts like this, right? Something like Tammy did, right? I sold this home in Benton in 2021 and did an equity evaluation today. They earned over $100,000 in equity in 2 years. If you want a free equity and evaluation, just DM me your address, right? Do you think that you could take some of these posts and text them or email them directly to the leads you're getting? Absolutely, right? Do you think that you could also invite some of these leads to have them follow you directly on your social feed? Absolutely, 100%, right? Because in doing that, they're going to subscribe to your marketing. They're going to go through and they're actually going to follow you so that they can see all of that marketing you do. And it's marketing that doesn't, yes, you can pay for social media, but it doesn't necessarily cost you money. It doesn't cost you money to have, to do social media every day. So it's the way to continue to reach out to people long-term forever without you actually having to pay money for postage, without you having to spend the time texting, because you should be doing social media anyways. So for an example for some of those, make sure that we are doing posts where we're asking for it, right? Yes, we need to have personal fun posts, but we do actually need to have these interactive and engaging posts as well. And then last but not least, I do want to show you this, and it's going to be database emails, right? And what's important about emails? Emails, in my opinion, are going to be some of the most underutilized way that you can reach out to people. And I do like it. Mark actually came up. I like you, Mark. It's really talkative. But Mark made a really good point. You can also create a Facebook custom audience for these leads. Absolutely, you can. If you want more information about how to create those or what he's mentioning, just send me a DM on Instagram, because that's a completely different conversation that has more information to it. So just send me a DM and I'll make sure that I'll get you some information on it and what that actually means. So don't forget, just go over to Instagram, send me a DM, and we can have a conversation about it. But let's look at weekly database emails. Why are they so important, right? Why is it a way for you to communicate? Because remember, we're looking at different types of communications. The good news is most people are visual. 65% of people are visual. So emails work effective. So I'm going to show you guys a coaching client that I have that actually just started sending out weekly emails to his database. Now, do we think all of these leads need to be in your database? Yes, right? All of these people should be getting your emails every week. Now, I'm not talking about newsletters. Newsletters are different. These are weekly specific emails to your database. So let's look at why this is important. And this is Josh, a coaching client of ours. And he's doing a program, one of our internal Tom Ferry programs called 100K in 100 Days, where they gave him some emails. But this is going to be what he did. So last week, he sent out 300 emails. He had a 94.6 open rate. That's huge. I don't know if anybody here looks at open rates and tracking for emails, but 94.6% is a massive return on the emails that you're looking at. To have almost 95, so almost everybody opened it. Now, in saying that, he got 20 responses. 20 people actually responded to him. Again, a massive return on the emails that he sent out. And then from that, he received 12 appointments from it, right? He re-engaged 12 people. Now, the crazy thing about it is, if you think about it, right? How long do you think this email took him to put together? Like 5 minutes tops, right? Maybe 5 minutes. I'll send, oh, don't worry, Megan, in a second, I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like. But I'll give you the exact one that he sent out so you can definitely use it. But 5 minutes, he got 12 appointments. When is the last time you guys did something in 5 minutes and actually got 12 appointments from it, right? And how much did it cost him to send out this email? $0, right? It didn't cost him anything to send the emails out. The email was completely free, right? It was completely free for him to send out. He was able to send this out. He got 12 appointments from it. So even his ROI, even if he only closes one of them, his ROI is going to be insane because it was completely free. His dollar per minute that he makes is going to be crazy because, again, it was just from sending out so far one email, but now he's going to be sending them out repeatedly, right? And again, it's staying in front of them. So what did the email look like? I will send it to you guys. It's going to look something like this. It's going to say, "Hey there, Kevin. I hope you're having a wonderful fall season and enjoy the cooler weather, at least today, because he's also in Texas and, we have fall, so it gets real hot. I wanted to let you know that we're fast approaching the end of 2024. I've set aside some time to put together home equity reports for my clients and friends. What past recipients have noticed, and these reports are often more comprehensive and accurate than you might get from an online tool. Would you be open to me sending you one for your home? Let me know." So of these responses, of 20 responses, he was able actually to set 12 appointments for him to actually go into their homes and give them the information specifically. So what's important about that is that now he's got 12 different people that he can go into their homes. It's 12 different pieces of information. He's showing them that they're working. He's able to also do, some kinesthetic communication by bringing the information to them, auditory communication because he's going to be there in person for them. And of course, an email is going to be set at visual communication. So all of these different types of communication are going to be accomplished in this one act of sending out the emails. So in saying that, does that help give you guys some ideas of things that you can use to do long-term follow-up? Rob asked how big his database was. He only sent out 300 emails. So 12 appointments out of 300 people. right? Your database may be larger, it may be smaller, but he's only sending out, in that case, he sent out 300 emails to get 12 appointments. So definitely a good thing. So before we look at this, one big thing, and that, Rob, that actually brings up an important question is what do you do if you don't have a database, right? What do you do if you don't actually have enough leads, right? I mean, I know we're all here as a guest of sold.com, right? You guys know that they have a really great lead platform, right? So what do you do and what do you use if you would like more leads from them, right? Do you guys want to know how that works? Would that be helpful? So the good news is Deanna's here and she'll actually be able to help you guys with that. So Deanna, I know we were talking about the other day, but do you want to go ahead and share with everybody what you told me about how they can get more leads?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first off, great information. I think for the people, everybody, or I would say most everybody on this call is in our network, and there's so many great takeaways. I took screenshots. You guys will get the slides. You guys will get the recordings of this, but so many great takeaways, because one of the stats that Emily shared really early on was that most of the people, the seller leads, are going to be looking to do something 18 to 36 months out. Our stats show about 10% of the folks that you talk to today are going to be ready in the now moment. So for those people, we all want the nows, right? But it all starts with pipeline. And I think a lot of people get scared of that pipeline, but it is really figuring it out today, implementing the follow-up, implementing how to get in front of people, and then building that pipeline. So 3, 6, 9, 18 months from now, you have all those nows popping from when you started those conversations a while back. But it is the nature of online lead generation, right? So a lot of people get discouraged of it's a bad lead when they aren't ready to convert right now. But the reality is that's just the way that online seller leads are. It's really hard to run an ad that says, click here if you're looking to sell your house today. I'm sure most of you guys have posted something on social media as asking those questions, right? If you're looking to sell your house, click on this. Most of the time it's like your friends or family saying like, good job, great luck, good luck on whatever you're doing, right? You're not actually getting somebody that says, I'm thinking about selling. So the same thing happens on a larger scale with a company like sold.com. We can't just run an ad that says, click here if you're looking to sell your home. We can, but it's not going to be something that keeps a business sustainable at a larger scale. So most of the time, those inquiries are going to be from people that are, number one, requesting a free home valuation, or two, which is actually going to be the closest that you can get to a now client, which is somebody who's looking to find out a cash offer on their property. Those people are 22% more likely to do something in the now moment versus somebody who's requesting a home valuation, or about 10%. So as we talk about pipeline, as we talk about how do you guys get in front of people, how do you guys start to have contacts that you can reach out to, I'm going to share my screen really quick so you guys can see some visual stuff as well. Like I mentioned, most of the leads that we get are super top of funnel. And so where most people stumble as we work with our agent success team is, how do I talk to people that are ready, that aren't ready right now, right? How do I keep in contact with those people? How do I keep those conversations going? So a lot of the things that Emily talked about today are going to be super helpful for that, because you guys will be able to use, like I said, I took the screenshots of check in with people. It isn't, are you ready to sell yet? It's just these soft little nudges to keep yourself in front of people. So if you're in our network today and you already are receiving leads from us, don't be discouraged that these people aren't ready today. Transparently, and this is a slide I show when you guys originally joined our network as well. So for some of you guys have seen this before. Transparently, most of them are not going to be ready today. It doesn't mean it's a bad lead. It just means that they're dipping their toe in. They're trying to find out what their house is worth so that they can eventually take the steps to sell their properties. No matter what you're selling, traditionally people are looking at a home valuation first, or a valuation of the item that they're thinking about selling. So now it comes down to, how do you fill your pipeline with more people to reach out to? How do you get more email addresses that you can reach out to people with the different examples that Emily shared? How do you get more phone numbers? How do you get more addresses for people to contact? So quick refresher on how we assign leads. So when you guys created your profile, everyone was immediately eligible for leads. And then what I directed everybody to do was go into your profile and go check out your ranks. And so rank is super important because that tells you the order that you are in line to receive a lead when we have it. So Sold.com focuses 100% on seller leads. And again, most of the types of leads you're going to get are find out what my house is worth or get a cash offer on a property. Quick side note on that lead type, don't be discouraged by it. Most people do not wind up going with a cash offer because the cash offers are so significantly low compared to what their house value is. I have lots of different trainings and YouTube videos on how to approach those people if you need help with that. But those are the two types of ads. Our concierge team is calling every single consumer that comes through our site with the goal of setting up an in-house consultation. So the goal is to get in front of people, right? To have your materials, to have your conversations, to make an introduction of yourself. And so, yes, obviously you guys are hoping that that person is one of those 10 percenters that's ready to do something right now. But the likelihood is obviously that they're not. 90% of them are not going to be ready in the now. And so you have to figure out through that communication what it is that's going to, like, who they are. So you know how to communicate with them. Emily talked about in the beginning, love languages. And so I love relating things to dating because we've all been there, right? We've all been there in some fashion. We have our nightmare stories, but I love relating things to dating because I think in most cases, when people are dating, they're hoping to get married, right? They're not just doing it for fun. Maybe at some points in our life, we were just doing it for fun. But in most cases, we're doing it for the goal of ultimately finding this life partner, right? And so some people are a little bit more eager than others. If I show up to a date and I sit down across from another person and I said, hey, my name's Deanna, nice to meet you. And this is first date. I'm so glad to meet you. So like, what are your goals? Like, are you thinking about selling your house? Hopefully you're not asking that on a date. Are you thinking about getting married anytime soon? Like, what's your plans? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years with marriage? Do you see yourself with kids? What would you name your kids? Do you want boys or you want girls? I sound like a loon, right? If anybody went on a date and the person across from you started immediately talking to you about getting married, how many kids they want, what are we naming our kids? You sound like a little bit of a cuckoo bird there. And so as extreme and ridiculous as that example sounds, that is the equivalent when it comes down to when you guys are going on these consultations, right? If you're immediately hopping into what are your goals in selling, that's the equivalent of, are you looking to get married? There are ways, as Emily talked about, to passively have these conversations with them. So it's not only how you're going to communicate with them, right? Email, text messages, verbally, in person. But it is also what phase, like understanding what phase of their journey that they're in. You can go fishing. You can tease out a little bit of like, what's your plans over the next 5 years? Like, where do you see yourself? And if they bring up, well, I hope to be married in the next 5 years, then amazing. They opened the door. You can start talking about that, right? But if they don't open the door, you can't say, oh, you didn't say marriage. So is that not something you're looking to do? And you don't leave that date, or I hope you don't leave that date and say, well, I'm never going to date that person again. They didn't talk about marriage. Again, if I'm equating this to when you guys are meeting on these consultations, that's a lot of times what's happening, right? They didn't talk about selling their house, so they must not be interested. It must be a bad lead and it must be a waste of time. But as Emily started this presentation, is what you're saying or how you're communicating the thing that's actually hurting you in the end. And so you have to just make sure that you're taking those right approaches. So when we set up these appointments, this ranking is what's going to dictate where you are in line to receive that appointment opportunity. And so if in this example, your rank is 50, that means that 49 other people would have to reject that lead in order for you to have the opportunity to claim that appointment. And so the likelihood of this is a real portal, of somebody getting a lead with this type of a ranking from Sold.com is probably very slim to none. So what we have talked about in our initial onboard, what we've talked about, and you've maybe seen in my other webinars, is the option of being able to sponsor zip codes. And I know that spending money on advertising is obviously always the thing that's on the last thing on people's mind. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out, ask yourself, how else are you going to get seller business if you're not doing this? Because ultimately, the other alternative, if you want to do something for free, is knocking on consumers' doors. And does that work? 100% it does. but time is money. And are you actually going to do it, right? It's being real with yourself and asking those questions. Or are you better suited for being teed up for people who are requesting home valuations and cash offers, where you can implement these tools and now reach out to these people with the proper steps and the proper operational flows to get in front of them? So how do you increase your rank? We allow sponsoring of zip codes. A lot of you guys that joined our network said, I want to wait and see how this pans out first. If you've been with us for longer than a couple of weeks and have not received a lead from us, the spoiler alert is that's going to be what your flow is with sold.com. Again, be real with yourself. If you have not logged into your portal and you have not looked at this yet and you don't know what your rank is, then that is something that you guys should go look at. This is something also our team can reach or let you know as well. So you can always go on chat and ask them what your ranking is and then start conversations with that too. But the big piece here is if you want to bump your rank up, you can do so by sponsoring zip codes. There's a few different benefits. Number one, you become the top person that gets a text every time we get a appointment in the areas in which you sponsor. Two, normally sold.com, you pay a 35% referral fee for every single consumer that you close a listing on. When you sponsor a lead or sponsor a zip code, if you get an appointment from us and close it, you'll only pay a 30% referral fee. Better than that, and this is something that is newly launched in January. So if you've been with us for a while, this might be the first time you've heard it. A reminder for others is when you sponsor zip codes, not only are you first in line to get the appointment when we get it in your area, but additionally, you're going to get the full contact details for every single consumer who comes to the site and the zip codes that you own. So concierge is working it, but also you're getting it so that you can start your outbound, right? You want to start reaching out to them. You want to be somebody who's constantly reaching out to them in different avenues and trying to get that person on the phone. Start your mailer campaigns. You can knock on their door. But if you wind up getting your own appointment and getting your own listing, we will completely waive the referral fee off that person entirely. So we have a lot of people in our network who are really great at working those folks, and they aren't sponsoring zip codes. And so they're still paying a referral fee. So two big benefits. You're going to get leads that you ordinarily have been missing out on because your rank has put you in a position to not receive them. But two, you're going to also have a 0% referral fee on anybody who you get your own appointment off of. And so these are, again, all sellers. So how do you go about doing that? I'm going to link in the chat a link that you guys can fill out. If you are on a desktop where you can scan, you can also scan this QR code and it'll take you to a form that you can fill out. Cost-wise, you're seeing it on the screen. Our retail pricing for zip codes can range up to $250 per zip code. So two big promos that we have running right now. One is we are discounting every single zip code down to $55 each per month per zip code. And so whether you already own zip codes and you want to add on more, this is your opportunity to add on more at the discounted rate versus the retail pricing that you ordinarily would be at. If you do not sponsor zip codes, this gives you the rare chance to still get the onboard welcome pricing that we offered when you first joined our network that ordinarily has expired and you haven't had access to. Two is the other promo, especially for somebody looking to buy right now, is we are giving the rest of the year for free. So what does that mean? When you have a year contract, not only are you going to get the full year, but we are going to act as though you didn't sign up until January 1st of 2025. So when you buy today, you're getting, I think we're at the end of October, you're getting November and December for free. So you're getting 14 months, is that right? 13 months for the price of 12. No, 14 is right. Sorry, guys. 14 months for the price of 12. So your contract would not renew until January 1st of 2026. So when you buy today, you are getting the rest of the year for free. And so that is a huge opportunity to get 2 free months of, 2.5 free months of advertising on us. So that is something that we rarely ever offer. It's a once a year thing. Take advantage of it. Get that free advertising for yourself. But like I mentioned, this is something that we're near the end of the year. A lot of people take their foot off the pedal at the end of the year because no one's looking to do something. The other thing that Emily talked about is that people that are looking today 10% of them are looking to do something in the now, right? Most of these people are thinking, okay, great. It's October. My kids graduate high school in June of next year, May of next year. We don't really need this big of a house. I wonder what our house is worth. So when people think about, I'm not going to advertise in the winter because it doesn't make any sense. No one's looking to do something. You're actually hurting yourself quite a bit because the people that you're generating now are filling your pipeline for the spring and the summer of next year. I've been in this space for quite some time, and a lot of people bite themselves by not advertising now because they think that they shouldn't. Right now is the best time to advertise. People are home, people are looking at things. And it gives you the opportunity to have these conversations with them and start to prep them for building your pipeline out for the following year. Have a predictive pipeline. If anybody has questions, please feel free to reach out. I know we went a couple of minutes over, so I appreciate the time today. If you guys have interest, fill out that form. Our team will call back from a 949 number. And they can talk to you about what your rank is. They can talk to you about what the what lead volume looks like in your area. So if you guys have questions on that type of stuff, definitely let us know because we can go through all the in-depth information on how you guys can maximize your profile and really how many leads that you guys should expect to receive from that. So Emily, I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you going through all of this amazing content. We will send the recording. We will send screenshots. Follow Emily on social media because she has just a ton of great tips to continue sharing. Anything else, Emily, before I let our group go?
No, I do wish everybody the best, right? And if you are seeing success with some of these, especially the specific ones that I mentioned, reach out to me and let me know, because you never know whenever I'm going to use your screenshot and your information to present it out to an entire group of hundreds of thousands of people on my next presentation. So definitely send me that because I love to be able to share results and big wins for people.
Yeah, I love that. And I think share it with us too, because we would love to do webinars to talk through that where you
Absolutely.
guys, other people who are struggling, like walk through what your business operational flow is and let's have people learn from you. So we would love to put you in the spotlight. And yeah, you may see your screenshots on Emily's next webinar.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys have additional questions, because I'm seeing some stuff pop into the chat. If you guys have questions on sponsoring zip codes or how your rank works, please fill out that form and a member of our team can reach out to you. And we can go through what your rank means and how that's impacting you guys. But thank you guys again. Enjoy the rest of your week. Emily, thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.